Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Opportunity. Today I am sharing the stage with a good friend of mine, Ace Chapman. I've known him for over 7 years at this point, and I love Ace. He is a master deal maker. He's funny. Unfortunately, his internet connection and mine were not matching up perfectly, so hopefully we're able to smooth that out in the edits. But Ace is an amazing case study of someone that can go from nothing to something using acquisitions. His first deal, he put in $3,000 of his own money, walked out with $300,000 not that long later. And from then, he's just been snowballing bigger and bigger. And he's went from doing these no money down creative financing style deals to buying tons of online businesses from us. And now he is starting his own funds, or has started his own funds rather. Ace promised me he'll come back for a part two. We didn't get into all the fun stuff that I wanted to talk about, but if you like this episode, leave a comment, tag him, annoy him on social media to come back for part two. I'm sure he'll be more than happy to do that. So without further ado, here's my good friend Ace, and one of the best people I know when it comes to learning how to buy a business. So that sounds like something you want to learn about. This is the episode for you. See you on the other side. All right, I am here with my good friend Ace Chapman. Ace and I have known each other for a little over 7 years now. It's wild. I have seen you do so much crazy stuff. I always love your stories, man. You're really one of the most fun people in the industry to talk about deal making. So, but for my audience out there that doesn't know you, give us a brief background on the legend that is Ace Chapman. Who are you? Where are you at? What are you doing?
Well, it's good to hear that somebody appreciates some of the craziness. Sometimes some of the stories, like when I look back, it's like, man, that was so stressful, but I learned so much from it. My very first business was a stock market simulator. It's called Cool Wall Street. I was studying political science. I dreamed of going to law school and eventually going into politics. So I was just really involved at that point in politics and in campaigns and that kind of thing. I had the opportunity of meeting Obama before he was president. Got to spend time with
You
a
met
lot
Obama
of
before he was cool.
yeah. Spent some time with a bunch of senators, Bill Clinton and all that. And I will say with Obama, I met him. And this is before he started running and anything. It's like murmurs of, oh, this guy's going to be president. And, I was with my girlfriend and we meet him. I was like, there's no way that dude is going to be the first black president.
You're unimpressed.
I was not impressed. And obviously I had no idea. So I'm much better off in business than politics. I just did not have a read on that situation. So ended up coming across this stock market simulator that I was using as a user. And the site was just terrible. It was always crashing. There was no support. They had a forum on their site where the whole forum was just people saying, hey, like, I can't get in touch with anybody. I'm having this issue with my account. I need help, da, da, da. And no response from the folks. And so I reached out to become an intern with them. They reached back out and said basically they had moved on to another business and they wanted to sell it. And that kind of became my very first opportunity. As a broke college kid, they entrusted me with their business. I paid them everything I had, which was $3,000 as a down payment, and kind of structured the rest on this $70,000 purchase. And that was the beginning of 20 years, which is crazy to think about. So it's been 20 years of deal making since then.
Yeah, I love that story about how you acquire that. I think you outline it really well in your book, and we'll put a link in the show notes if anyone wants to like explore that in depth. But you've done so much. I was joking before the recording; we were about to do like a 6 hour mastermind here. I feel like we could talk forever, but I want to fast forward a little bit. So you got your first deal in, which was that you were able to grow it. It collapses, right? If I'm not mistaken, because of the .com burst, something like that.
Yeah, yeah. So, I'm in my dorm room. I'm working on this business. And, one of the magical things was that very first deposit. And so, the money comes into my account for that monthly's income. And it was from a company at that point, it was called DoubleClick. It's now something everybody kind of knows as AdSense and AdWords. And I get this money that comes in. I check my account and it's like, I've got $5,000. And I'm like, what in the world? What's happening? Where did this money come from? And I kind of forgot, like, oh yeah, like I'm going to get this money every month. And for me, it was so interesting because before that, I had worked some jobs. And so I was used to really anticipating, knowing, okay, every 2 weeks, this money is going to come into my account. Not just like, okay, one day I get some money from here, another day I get some money from there. I could be sleeping, I wake up in the morning and there's money. And so there's just money that's always coming in. And so that transition was like, wow, this is really cool. And it was really a life changing thing because I realized that with that $3,000 being leveraged, I was now making as much as my friends that had graduated from college and that were working 8 hour a day jobs, and a lot of times a lot more than that. And so, here I was like, man, like nobody ever told me that you could just buy income the same way you buy a house, the same way you buy a car. And so that was the life changing realization that business gave me, was that, wow, I can just go buy income. So I ended up leaving college. I ran that business for 3 years. And then there was the dot com collapse. And a lot of our clients that were paying us ad revenue went out of business. And so they were just gone. And so, eventually,
That's the other hallmark of entrepreneurship: the unstable check and sometimes no check.
exactly, exactly. So that was the other realization. It's like, wait a minute. You can buy that income, but it can just disappear. So that business closed down. And so I left college to run that business. And, here I was without a degree, now without a business, pretty distraught, as a 20, 22, 23-year-old kid. And now it's on the other side of that equation where my friends were graduating, getting these six-figure jobs. And I'm like, wait a minute. Here I am.
What have I done? Yeah.
What have I done? And I was very fortunate that a friend of mine connected me with a guy named Mike Aiken, who was in my city. He was like, man, you should talk to this guy. I think you bought that business. I think he does something like that. And so I talked to get introduced to Mike, and I'm like, yeah, Eric was saying that you do something similar to what I do. And Mike was like, well, yeah, I don't know much about what you do. It's like, I flip hospitals. And I'm like, yeah, I don't do anything like that. That is at a whole nother level, you know.
Same, same, same.
Yeah, like we have nothing. Like I'm embarrassed that I even started the conversation. Like, oh, I think we do something similar. So he becomes an amazing mentor. And just the very first conversation was a huge perspective and paradigm shift for me, because he's asking me, what happened with the business before? I'm like, it was a failure. I'd run it and da da da. And he's like, well, tell me about the deal. And like, well, I bought the business. I put 3,000 down. I was like, well, over these 3 years, how much were you taking out? And I was like, well, I was taking out about 100 a year. And it's like, so basically, you turned $3,000 into 300,000, and you think that's a mistake? You think that was a failure? Like, what are you thinking? Like, you need to go and do that more and more. And it was the first time that I saw business. It was one of the things that he helped me with over the course of our time together, was just seeing that businesses aren't kind of the end. That's not the goal. Is the business? It's literally just a tool. It's just a means to an end. And I think at that point, I saw business from the perspective of, all of our heroes: Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, just everybody who had a business. They grew that business for forever. And eventually, they take it public, and it's just their legacy. And so I thought that's what Cool Wall Street was for me. So when that didn't happen, I'm like, oh, that was a failure. And little I know, that's less than 1% of businesses that do that. And so what he taught was like, no, like the goal is that these businesses are creating the life that you want. It's not about you. It's like there are two ways to kind of go into the business. You can give your life to the business, or the business can give you life. And that perspective has really kind of been a mantra for me over these last 20 years. And so after that, I started doing a lot of different types of deals and got to start having fun with it.
I love that. So after you think it's a failure at first, your mentor that you meet, he like turns that around in your head. I feel like, especially the way that you do deals, or at least you were doing deals, a lot of these no money down, creative deal structuring, levering up the deal. I feel like other people would get extremely stressed out like doing
Mm.
that. Like you put $3,000 and then leverage the rest. Like, how did you like mentally bounce back from that? I'm assuming you were able to pay off the first loan or the first like lever of that initial business. But has it always been that way? Or have you also had that stumbling block where you levered too far in a business and everything just went to shit?
Yeah, it's never been. the case that because of the leverage, it went to shit. Sometimes it's just that the business, just has issues. And one of the things that, I learned later was I started making the deal structure based around the fact that, hey, maybe this thing won't work. Right. And that was a great lesson from the first one. It's like I left that understanding
Mm.
two things. One is the business should always be for sale because I had an offer to buy that business. That was a seven-figure offer, would have been, amazing for me at that point. But I again was stuck in this vision of no, like the goal is what I was talking about earlier. Steve Jobs, Bill Gates is going to grow, and this is going to be my legacy, and it's all this other ridiculous
This
stuff
is the
that
next
we get
Apple.
taught.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get taught this stuff. It's not like we come. It's not like we're born. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna have a business. That's my legacy. No, somebody put that in your head. You're not meant to do that as a human. So for me, that was one thing. It's like, okay, the business is really just inventory. It's always for sale. The other thing was the businesses are going to fail. I think that's one of the other things that we get tricked into is like, there's the what I call the rule of 100. Like in 100 years, the very best businesses that we have right now, if you look at the Fortune 500, whatever, 90% of them are going to be gone. They're either going to been merged into something else or they're going to be out of business or whatever. And these are the
Yeah.
best. These are the absolute best businesses. So it doesn't make sense to try to do deals as if you think the business isn't going to fail. That just doesn't make sense. And so the way you structure the deal has to be based on that. And that's one of the mistakes that a lot of beginners make is they haven't gone through that experience. They don't understand that no, like the likelihood is that it fails. It's that, the odds are more in favor of it.
That's the standard.
Yeah, yeah. Failure is the standard. And that's one of the things that a lot of people just don't get. There's the extreme example of venture capital where, like, no, it is built into the model that like 98% of these things are going to fail. But then after that, it's still always above 50. It just goes down slightly. So when you're going into this, you have to do the deal structure based on that recognition of the facts.
Yeah, I want to get into the deal structuring, but before we do, I just want to talk about like the different asset classes of businesses that you invested in. So I know your history like decently well, but you've done online and offline. There's probably some other asset classes that you've invested in. But between like online and offline businesses in general, like what are the pros and cons of these in terms of acquisition for you, like in terms of liquidity, the skills required, ROI? Like tell me a bit about your thoughts there.
Yeah, one of the things that I love about internet businesses is the liquidity. So you kind of have these two things. So on one side, I love the liquidity of internet businesses. On the other side, I love the stability of offline businesses. And so on the liquidity side, it's so powerful to be able to sell this income producing asset to anyone on earth. I kind of call, what we do, it was the original crypto because it can store this value.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
I always joke, Ace, that depending on the season, my SEO friends are my SEO friends, or they're my crypto friends, and then a crash happens, and then now they're my SEO friends again. So that's a very
exactly.
apt analogy.
Exactly. So, it's like you have this store value. It can print off dividends. You can sell it to anyone on earth. When you sell it to them, you can transfer it very easily. You can do it without a lot of regulation and headache. And so this becomes kind of just this really cool thing where you have this marketplace that you can sell this asset to anywhere and anyone. And you compare that to an offline business. If I'm trying to sell an offline business, the market, I'm never going to get an efficient price for selling that income. It's always going to be inefficient because I've only got, maybe a 60-mile, max 90-mile radius of humans that would be interested in buying that physical location because of the proximity. And so when I'm trying to sell that, I don't have everybody on earth that's interested in income that I could try to promote that to. Now, on the other side, there is stability. And stability comes in two things. One, there just aren't businesses that online that have been around for as long as offline businesses. We did a deal on a business that was, about $1 million business. So not huge, but it had been around for 40 years. And so
Wow.
you're not going to be able to get that
That's a
online.
long time for business, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But to be
But
able
unless you buy, like, Al Gore's original affiliate website, it's not happening.
exactly, exactly. So, yeah, like you've just got that stability. So, one is the amount of time that it's been around. And then the other side is, it's a lot tougher to disrupt those businesses. Even if it's just a simple burger restaurant. If I've got a blog about burgers, I can have, 20 competitors overnight. If I'm on a corner and I've got this corner, I have a burger restaurant that's a physical location, for somebody to come and compete with me, there's got to be space that's even available that they can come and rent or buy. They've got to spend the money to do all the build out and all that. They've got to get the licenses from the government. They've got to hire the employees. I've already built a brand and people are used to coming to me. So now they got to overcome that. So there's just built in stability from the income. So with the history and the competitive hurdle, you've got a moat around a business like that you just don't have with internet based businesses. And now that it's become easier and cheaper to do things like SaaS and all that, it used to be that some business models like SaaS had a bit more of a moat, but that's quickly disappearing as well. So that's what I see. And over my 20 years, I've done deals in both, and like both for their unique reasons.
It's funny you bring up SaaS. I was just talking to one of my SaaS friends that I had told him, like, I believe there's four horsemen of wealth, and like from weakest to strongest, it's
Mm,
coding, sales, marketing, and then delegation is like the ultimate one. I think coding is just going to continuously get weaker and weaker. Like, I have a friend, he just programmed a golf app, like, frustratingly, granted, over like 2 week period, using just ChatGPT. He doesn't know how to code at
mm.
all. So,
Yeah,
like it's
yeah.
probably filled with bugs and all that stuff, but like that reality is coming.
Oh, sooner or later.
I'm curious. Yeah. I'm curious with your online investments and offline investments, like, so you mentioned offline's more steady, which that makes total sense to me. Like, you don't have to deal with like the Google updates that are destroying like 80% of your income overnight. With your own portfolios that you're building now, are you doing like a mix and match of online and offline? Or how do you kind of distribute that kind of capital? Or are you focused mainly online or offline at the moment?
Yeah, so typically, we want to do both because that's where you get the ability to leverage a just different asset. Unfortunately, most of the time in a fund, you do have very specific types of assets that you have to buy. But if, like, in my personal life, I don't have to decide, like, okay, well, this is going to be an offline fund or this is going to be an online, fund. For me, when I'm building my own portfolio, which is basically just like a holding company, I'm looking for all of those assets and everything ends up being kind of complementary to the growth. So if I have a bookkeeping business, I'm looking for other assets that have my target market as clients. I'm looking for things that have traffic that I can promote to, like blogs. But then I'm looking for other bookkeeping businesses as well. I'm looking for SaaS that's in that space. And so it gets to be really exciting when you mix the two. Like, I think that's the ideal situation is, you're buying an offline business and then you're adding all of the kind of strategic benefits to that offline business, or the other way around. You can buy the internet business. We were looking at this in a specific space recently where it's basically a internet-based business. It generates leads to a specific space. We're looking at doing deals in that space. Actually, two deals. One deal that is with you guys. So we're looking at
Oh,
these.
definitely. I'll get the sales guys calling you after
Yeah,
this call.
yeah.
Yes,
Well,
I'll get it done.
I've already
Don't you
I had a
worry.
conversation. I had a conversation with the seller,
Perfect.
and in this case, we're looking at these two types of businesses. And so, one of the places that I'll start is what are the businesses that are on the market that are generating the leads. And this is where just I love this stuff because while other people are trying to figure out how to do marketing on Facebook and sends Facebook tens of thousands of dollars each month in order to, or Meta, in order to rent access to eyeballs. I want to start with buying a business that is going to pay me to access those eyeballs. So instead of sending this expense to rent the access and actually buy a business, own that business, and that business is generating those leads for me, but I'm getting paid. I'm literally buying the income. And then the side benefit is that they have those leads. And so when you either way, you're starting with one of those. If it's offline, you're kind of buying the business and you're buying the other things that instantly day one are going to grow that business. And what happens in either case, whether you start with online or you start with offline, in both of those cases, it is a 2 plus 2 equals 8 situation. So if I can buy a business that is at a 3 multiple, that day one I'm able to advertise this complimentary service to, that grows my other business without detracting from that income, whatever each dollar that increases is basically infinite return because I'm already getting my return off of the 3 multiple.
I love that, man. I feel like not enough people think that way. So that's how I think about things when I'm talking to people about buying affiliate sites or really any business on a marketplace. Like, there's nothing stopping you from using that affiliate site as the launching pad for your info course or your consulting business or whatever, your e commerce products. I have a friend, he bought an e commerce business from us, I believe, a few years ago in the beauty space. And he used the fact that those funnels worked as a way to sell distribution to all the different retail stores like Walmart, Kroger's, all that kind of stuff. He was able to use his paid funnel as proof like, look, people want this, right? Like as part of his like leverage to get in there. And now the e-commerce side is actually makes up a much smaller portion of his income, ironically. But he was able to use that acquisition as a is like foothold into getting much bigger distribution in the
Yeah.
offline retail stores. So I love that you think that way. You're like one of the few people that I meet in the space that do, which is really cool. I want to back up real quick on the offline business stuff. So I've always been interested in this. So I have a few friends that right now they're looking at buying local businesses. And I know you've done this, so you're the perfect person to ask. They think that if I buy like a local business, like let's say it's a, I don't know, a cleaning company as a common example, they don't have their act together when it comes to internet marketing. So my friends come in, acquire the company, apply the internet marketing, and they will see a huge boost. I don't disagree with that. I think there's probably like, things that they're not thinking about on that. But what is your thoughts on something like that with a local business? Like, is that like the perfect prime target for you? Someone who's successful, making money, but has no real internet marketing presence?
I love those deals. I love those deals.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of deals like that. One of the things I really love, I'll give you an example. I was doing a roll up of tanning salons that was started by a deal where I walked into the salon. I'm talking to the owner. Wasn't interested in the space at that point. I'm younger. I'm just like, I want to see everything that's for sale. And I was in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So there's just only so many things that were for sale. And so I went to this tanning salon, the first time I'd ever walked into a tanning salon in my life. And I'm talking to the owner. And so it's one thing to not be using or not be, advertising on the internet or have a strong social media presence. But with her, I'm asking, okay, you've got this database. You have a database of like 14,000 customers. And this again was been in business for 30 years, hadn't done outreach to get those 14,000. It was just over time building those contacts. And so I asked her, how often are you emailing or contacting these people? And she was like, oh, like, I don't really like to bother them. So I don't really do that.
I don't want to annoy them.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, well, yeah, I get that, but like, when was the last time you did? And she was like, never. I've never done it. And so, I'm immediately like, okay, let's get this deal closed. And that led me to doing a roll up in that industry. But I get that even where it's not, that's one of the stories I love because it's just so extreme, where it's like 14,000 people, small offline business, just a, little business. Like you've got emails, you've got phone, you've got their address, and you haven't done anything, but you see kind of just variants of that. So maybe they're doing once a year or, these other things. But I think sometimes it's not even like the most aggressive online strategy. They're just literally doing nothing.
Yeah. I am honestly shocked, man. Like, we have people that will build out email lists thinking that it'll bring up their valuation, and they'll never email the list for the exact same reason as that tanning salon person. They don't want to annoy their list. Like, man, they came from Google and you had a lead magnet. They opted in to get something from you. They literally gave you their email. Like, what are you doing? So, and you even
Exactly.
see that sometimes in the online space. I'm curious on the tanning salon roll up. So you ended up buying that one and then a few others. Tanning salon isn't necessarily your passion, obviously. It wasn't like an industry you knew about. So
That's an
when you
understatement.
are going,
Understatement.
yeah, the understatement. So, like, when you're buying all these businesses, I love the mindset of thinking of them as products on a shelf. But when it comes to actually integrating, because acquiring is one thing, like that's super fun. And then there's like, oh shit, I've acquired. I need to actually like make this work now. What's your process of going through those motions, especially in an industry you may not know that much about? Like if
Yeah,
the tanning salon
great
bed broke,
question.
like I don't know what to do.
That's such a great question, especially at that point, because I was really figuring that out. And now it's just standard protocol for the deals that I do. And the basic philosophy is everything that you need should be acquired. I'm not looking to do anything from scratch. And so at that point, I didn't really have that philosophy, but I had to figure it out. Number one, because even back then, there weren't all these courses and all this stuff online, but I knew I don't know anything about tanning salon. I don't know anything about being in a tanning bed. I don't know anything about, just this industry at all. And so the first deal that I did, it had an amazing operator. But just like I said, the owner wasn't even emailing. She just did no marketing. They just had an amazing product. People loved it. And that's how they grew. That's what they did. As I got into the space, like, okay, well, I want to do marketing, but I don't even know how to talk to the target. Like, what am I going to do? And so I ended up buying my next salon was one that was the opposite. You go in, like our manager was so just like obsessed with the cleanliness and the presentation and the lighting and all this stuff. You go into this other one, they've got thousands of fans on Facebook. It's really popular. I have to drive up with a girl who's gonna tan, and I'm, just hanging out with her so that I can kind of check out what's going on. And so, we go in, it's completely packed. The lobby is just dark and dingy and just totally off putting. My friend comes out. She's like, oh, the bed was just dusty. Like the area was dusty. It was a terrible experience, but they were amazing at the
So
marketing.
these are the true marketers.
They're marketers, baby. They were marketers, just killing the marketing. And so
The Tai Lopez of tanning.
I bought that one, and it came with their manager, who was an amazing marketer, and I literally switched the two. So, like, in addition to in the first one, like, that you've got the internal marketing, which most small businesses don't do a good job of. I kind of understood, like, hey, we should be selling lotions. And I asked the girl, it's like, well, the previous owner, she said never to tell anybody about lotions or try to sell a lotion or offer a lotion, because if they want lotion, they'll ask you.
The classic, yes.
So obviously, but you had just even the internal and just all of those things, which, just it becomes very exciting when you're in those offline businesses to be able to make those small tweaks and have, just huge amounts of income come through. And then you add to that being able to go and buy complementary online assets to those businesses, and it becomes just an amazing strategy.
I love that. That's awesome. So you started off, and maybe in the tanning salon, I believe you were still in this portion of how you were doing deals. You started off doing a lot of these creative financing, no money down deals. Tell me a bit about like the pros of doing that and the cons. Cause like I mentioned, some people get super stressed out by it. But obviously if it works, like you turn 3 grand into 300,000, right? It's like magic. So talk to me a little bit about how those structures work, both with an offline and an online business and how they differ.
Yeah, yeah, they do differ a lot. So back in the day, it was just a lot different with online businesses because there were so few buyers. And nobody could get SBA. Nobody was getting SBA. So the owner
Well,
knew that they
still
had.
kind of true today.
Yeah, it is. It is. You are correct.
Use online.
Still an expectation, which it makes it difficult to negotiate. Like a lot of sellers think, like, no, you can get a. So everybody knew there's no way you're getting a SBA. And so you were able to do kind of those creative deals. So, you would have a portion that's obviously your cash out of pocket. You have a portion that might be earn out. You have a portion that is seller financing. In offline businesses, it gets to be the deal structuring is a lot more fun because you've got a lot of different components in that business. When we were doing a deal on a wine business, that business had just a lot of assets that were inside of that business that we could have investments and that kind of thing, raise capital from other people, whether it was an institution that wanted to do equipment, whether it was somebody that did want to do SBA, whether it was just investors that were local and loved that business. So, with the offline, you have a lot more options to finance that business. And now you fast forward to today, a lot of people in general are just going after SBA. That's kind of become the thing that most people are doing. And it's one of the reasons that, I have raised funds is the deals today that you can get with the very creative financing just aren't very good deals. Now we've attracted, which is a good thing, we've attracted a lot of capital to this space. And so there's a lot of people that have money that are willing to buy businesses and don't mind writing at least a big chunk of a check. And so what
Yeah.
they end up doing is they get the very best deals. And so the people that are trying to do the really creative things are coming into the market and they don't really a lot of times even realize it, which is the other part because they don't have the experience. So they think, oh, I'm negotiating this really creative deal to buy this business. And it's like, yeah, the reason that you're getting that is that deal sucks. And I get the calls, man. I'm telling you, I get a lot of calls after, and sometimes, even from friends who, I think sometimes people that know you don't want to join your program. It's like, oh, I'll just talk to you a little bit here and there. I kind of get the idea. And so I just have
This is easy. Whatever. I'll just call Ace at midnight.
And so I've got, for some reason last year, I think a lot of people were bored during COVID, but last year, like I just had, this string of like people that I, kind of knew in passing that bought some deal. They just ends up going to zero. And then their contact like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do with this thing. I got to figure this out. But I think that is the key today is just getting, just taking it seriously. And I think private equity, there's a reason that all of the people that are in private equity have a fund. It's because that's the business model. Like, if you want to get into private equity, that is the best business model. Now, the other business model is I'm just here to do a deal to pay my bills. I'm just here to buy a kind of job. I'm just here to buy a business that I'm going to work. It's going to be my job. And I'm trying to quit my corporate job to get a job that at least I own. And there's a lot of respect around that. And in that case, you're just going to do SBA today. Like that's how you're going to get the deal done. And so I think that there are a lot of people that are preaching the no money down deals and that kind of thing today. And you're on the inside, just those things are not happening
Oh, yeah.
like
Yeah.
that. And like that just isn't the reality.
Especially in the online
Yeah,
world,
it's just not
like you
happening.
said, there's so many buyers with
There are
online,
too
like,
many
an
buyers.
online business versus an offline business, like a stock, you can liquidate it so much easier than, the offline business. There's so many buyers. It's taking longer now, as you know, with the environment and
Yeah.
everything, but yeah, that's interesting. I'm a fan of the no money down creative finance. I think everyone should learn how to do that, like, maybe not actually, like, do a deal, but at least know how to do it because it's a great tool set to have in your toolkit, but you're right, like there's such a bigger market and appetite to buy businesses now, like you do end up buying the crappy business, like, and if you do the
Yeah.
creative no money down financing, not all the time but a lot of times, you're making a crappier business even more fragile because
Yeah,
now you're
exactly.
adding in all these other things, right?
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of having people bake in, the ability to make a mistake because mistakes are bound to happen in this business. Like you said, like the standard is to fail. So you should bake in some failure in the deal. But let's talk about you starting these funds because this is something new that you and I haven't chatted about. So talk to me about the first fund you started. Like how did you get into to that side of the world from the no money down deal? Like what was that transition like?
So yeah, I think that is one of the things that a lot of people think. And so the same way that you can learn about doing a deal with no money down, it's just a process to do a fund as well. And so I think that's why people just they run to the no money down because it says, oh, no money. I don't have any money. That's the thing for me.
That's me.
Like you just partner
Yeah.
with me. I am your market because I ain't got no money. So the funny thing is, doing a fund is a form of no money down, but I think people think, oh, well, that's not me. I don't know how to run a fund, or even I've never done a business before, whatever the case may be. But what you see is like it is just a process, the same way that finding a no money down deal is a process. Starting a fund is a process. And I have to also mention that I was that guy. I was the guy that was like, I'm not gonna do a fund. And I remember I would do deals with people where it's like, all right, we'll go and we'll invest in this deal and just kind of do one-off deals every once in a while. So I had a couple investors that one was like, hey, you should really do this within a fund. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds interesting. And then I was fortunate enough to have another investor that mentioned, I was like, yeah, somebody else mentioned that. It's like, yeah, you really should do it. And my thought was, okay, but basically right now I can go and I can do a deal and all the money is essentially mine. And what you're telling me to do is go and do the deal and I'm not going to get all the money. Like this sounds like a very easy decision. I think I'll just keep the money. Um, keep all the money or part of the money. So I was really fortunate that he kind of pushed us like, well, let's just try this one fund. We tried, just one fund. And it wasn't until I was in the fund that I realized all of the benefits. In the real world of business, having a fund is almost like your credit report for the returns that you can generate. And so I'd done all these deals for 14 years where I didn't have like this audited trail of, okay, I did this and I got this return, I did this and I got this return. And so that was really just gone. That history is essentially gone. When you do it within a fund, now you're really building a track record. It's a wealthy person's credit report. So now, whenever I need capital, I can just say, hey, here, you can check my credit report here. And instead of that being debt, I can get equity essentially. And so but that's just one reason. So it's just all these tax benefits. Again, I think in general, for most of us, one of the most valuable things that we can do is look at what wealthy people are doing. And like, if we want to be wealthy, like if you want to be wealthy, then you want to study what those people are doing. The same way that if you want to be a great basketball player, you'd be remiss not to study Michael Jordan. So you want to study what they're doing and not try to, if you're what we end up doing is like we want to play in the NBA one day, but we're focused on what the little league folks are doing. And so all we do is focus on the little league. That's the maximum. Like that, not only is that the maximum, like that is the glass ceiling of as high as we can go, which means that we're probably going to end up lower. And so, if you're like focused on studying somebody's seven figure opportunity where it's like they've just reached seven figures, like, okay, that's your glass ceiling. I don't want to be a billionaire, but I want to study what the billionaires are doing because that makes making millions easy.
Give me a chance to land on Richard Branson's lawn, at least get it kicked off personally by him.
Exactly. Exactly.
I like that, man. I was just thinking this thought the other day. Like, there's so many levels to business in general. Like, when I first started, I was only thinking about affiliate marketing. And then I looked at a website like, no, this could be a media company. Like, what else can a media company do? And eventually, e commerce, software, all this stuff. I feel like starting a fund is you like starting at the top of the food chain of the business buyer. Like just like,
Yeah.
all right, I'm at the top now. Like this is the top of the
And
business model of it
that
all.
is one of the things that is important for people to understand is that it is a different thing. It's actually not even like the people, it is different from buying business. So the people that are at the top of the game when it comes to private equity funds or just in the game in general, like most of like just 99% of them have never bought a business and never owned a business. So they literally
So this is interesting you bring this up. So I literally was just reading about funds in a bit in preparation for talking to you. And one of the fund guys, a PE guy who starts funds, he said that a lot of PE firms view the operators almost like second class citizens, even though they're the ones that are like increasing all the revenue, which I thought was wild.
yeah.
But yeah, they said like no one like ever ran a business in most of the PE firms.
Yeah, yeah. So it is such a different perspective. So most of them come from investment banking. And, just they understand that operating a business is honestly for poor people. Running a business is for poor people. And when you look at even the wealthiest people that have gotten become billionaires from a business that they started and ran and kind of were involved in the operations, they don't become, Jeff Bezos didn't become wealthy from running and operating Amazon. Investment bankers made him wealthy. They figured out how to make him wealthy. They
Yeah.
made him wealthy by taking the company public and that kind of thing. And so, which is kind of this equity event. And so the whole thing is this different transition where it's like you don't really want to get bogged down operating a business. All a business is a bunch of work, a bunch of headaches. It's a bunch of headaches, it's a bunch of risk, and it's a bunch of work. And the risk is a big part of that because odds are you don't become Amazon, like we were saying before. So it's headaches, it's risk, and it's work.
Yeah, yeah.
And those are things that you want to avoid, not run to. And so it is really interesting that we live in a time where entrepreneurship and business ownership is so celebrated because that's not even like you mentioned, like the private equity guys, they look down on that because that's going to get you caught up with a bunch of time investment that's not building wealth. Whereas for me, like I'm trying to have as many exits as possible and those kind of things, equity events as possible, not getting bogged down into a decision about, what marketing plan we should be using.
Talking about like I build marketing plans for fun though, but yeah, I agree, man. I often compare it to I say it in a cheeky kind of way, and some people get a bit like miffed when I say it, but I always tell an entrepreneur like your number one goal should become the most useless person in your organization. Because if you're the most useless, you have a very sellable business. Like
Yeah.
that's like your goal. Because like your real business starts when you sell that first business, that liquidity event. That first one could be such a game changer if you get like 300, 600, 800,000, or a couple
Yeah.
mil in the pocket, right? Like that's huge.
And that should be the
I want to,
goal.
yeah, go.
The goal
Yeah.
should be that you're really a money manager. And the reason that, I like the fund business is like you're basically beginning at the end. You said kind of starting at the top, but I just see it as beginning at the end. So, at one day you've got to retire and you will become a full-time money manager. As your full-time money manager, you're outsourcing that to somebody else. You need to be smart enough to know who that person are. They doing the right thing? You need to understand how to manage your money. And the really unfortunate thing is that most people don't get into the money management business or the fund management business until they spent 40 years in a totally different thing. And then their whole livelihood depends on their ability to manage their money. I mean, you had people who were billionaires who were in that situation who turned their money over. We've seen the stories of Bernie Madoff and those kind of things who, unfortunately end up
Yeah.
committing suicide because they didn't know. They had to just, I don't know anything about managing money. So I've just got to turn all that over
Right.
to somebody else. And so I think that's really, it's not even beginning at the top. It's just beginning at the inevitable. At some point, you've got to know how to manage capital and grow. And the real devastating thing is if you get to the end and something bad happens and you don't know how to be in the business of managing money where you're raising capital, you can make money off of that capital, you're just in a very tough situation. So I think more people should be looking at that as an alternative.
I love it. I know you're short on time. I would love for you to come back on to
Would love to. I
discuss
feel like
like
we're just
how
right.
you
We were just
actually do the
getting
fun.
into the meat, man. We were just
Yeah, we're
into
just
the
getting into
meat.
it. This was supposed to be my 6 hour workshop with you, Ace. I
We're
feel
really are
rejected
gonna
from
have
you.
to just plug
But
it in, you know.
you have
Unfortunately,
just
when
too
they
much
sent that
history.
invite, it was just this amount of time, and so I got scheduled for something right after this. But yeah, we got to go
Yeah,
ahead
no
and say,
worries.
you know what? Block out the day, have a lunch break in between.
But yeah, I would love for you to come back on to talk about the fun stuff. I think that's super fascinating. Before you head off,
Yeah.
though, as we're winding down here, in your opinion, as a business buyer that's seen both sides of the world, of the online and offline world, what do you think right now is the big opportunities and the big challenges if you had to sum it up in, say, 2, 3 minutes?
Yeah, I think the big opportunity, what I am loving right now, is that there are just so many underutilized assets. So you got all of these underutilized assets that just are sitting there to be used. And so what we've been doing is doing a lot more JVs than ever before. So historically, a lot of my growth in the businesses was focused on growth through acquisitions. So we would look at businesses and try to buy those businesses. And then, we get the benefit of, like I was mentioning before, we get the cash flow, but then we get access to those resources that are just underutilized. Well, now, when we are working on that acquisition, if we don't buy the business, we already have a plan. We know what those resources could do. And so we still want to come up with a structure to do a deal with that person that doesn't include buying their business. And so now we've been doing more of these joint ventures where we just create a new LLC, a new entity. We've got these benefits, and it's just really exciting because with every deal that you do, you end up with all of these resources and networks and contacts and suppliers and IP and employees with extra capacity. And so now, just over the years, we've gotten really good with, like, there's just soft assets that are just in the millions. A business could be worth 200,000, but if you're good, you're going to find $1 million worth of soft assets. And now we can leverage those soft assets and do more joint ventures with other businesses and put those into entities that then start to create this other entity out of thin air that just has value and income. So next time we'll definitely have to dig into some of the examples of what we've been doing with those deals, because that just becomes an asset out of nothing that then we can exit as well.
I feel like we're probably at the start of a 4-part podcast series, so I'm glad you committed to that live on air here.
You got the
But
record.
yeah, man, that's like I would love to go into the details. I know you're running short on time. I know a few of those soft assets you're talking about, but man, it's always such a pleasure to catch up. I'm looking forward to us doing part two of our four
Yes.
part podcast. But if our audience wanted to catch up with you personally and reach out to you, where's the best place for them to connect with you?
They can send me a message through acechapman.com. On Instagram, I'm ace.chapman. And yeah, my email is ace@acechapman.com.
Awesome, man. Well, always a pleasure. Till next time.
Next time, man.
There you have it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it got you inspired at all the different things that are happening in this industry. And of course, if you just want to buy a highly profitable business, you can always go to empireflippers.com/marketplace, or maybe you want to make an exit of your highly profitable business, and you could go to empireflippers.com/sell your site. I've been your host, Greg. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave a review, give us a like, a follow, share it across social media. Talk to you all soon. See you on the next episode.